Jim Hightower is here with us, and he is probably known to most of you here in Texas, but really across the country. He is a legend, a writer, public speaker, author. He has done just about everything. Twice elected Texas Agricultural Commissioner. He believes that the true political spectrum is not right to left, but top to bottom, which I love. And he's become a leading national voice for the 80% of the public who no longer find themselves within shouting distance of Washington and the Wall Street powers at the top. I love that as well. So without any further ado, I'm going to give you populist road warrior Jim Hightower.
Somebody outside the Beltway offer one suggestion to you, and that is if you've got a 4 o'clock planning session, you might want to move it out to Black Star.
I like that idea.
A joy to be here. Got to acknowledge my old pal Bob Jensen over here, our host at this Institution of Erudition and Enlightenment, University of Texas. Bob is one of the great institutions himself of progressive politics here and around the country. You know, Oscar Wilde said, "Be yourself. Everyone else is already taken." More yourself than Dr. Jensen over the years. It's been my joy to work with him over the years, and just makes me happier than a flea at a dog show to be standing up here looking out at all of you feisty cooperativistas this morning, you democracy builders and corporate butt kickers, you agitators for America's proud progressive values of economic fairness, social justice, and equal opportunity for all people. That's what I think America actually stands for, and I know that's what the cooperative movement stands for. And I thank the NDBA for allowing Scruffy Texas Populists to be with you here to help kick off this Austin Cooperative Summit as you gather for a day to strategize, organize, harmonize, and mobilize to democratize economic power in our country and try to extend the power of cooperative communities. It's exciting for me to be with so many people who are doing so much. The thing I like most about the co-op movement is that it actually moves. That's kind of unusual for progressive organizations. It doesn't just gripe about the exploitative corporate power in our society. It doesn't just talk about the need for democracy. It gives ordinary people a practical way to do democracy. Years ago, when I first moved here to Austin, mid-70s, there was a moving company that had an advertising slogan that I liked, so I stole it for political purposes. And this wasn't one of those national moving chains. It was just a local joint. 2 big guys with a truck, you know, Skeeter and Boger, I think it was. You know. And they had an ad, they had it in the Yellow Pages, said, "If we can get it loose, we can move it." That seems to be what you're doing. You are getting it loose, changing the way our society thinks about the structure of business, the role of workers, and the rewards of work, the relationship of business to communities, to consumers. And I know that that's not easy to challenge the corporate order in our society. I've had my share of that as well. But as George Bernard Shaw said about 100 years ago, you don't make progress by standing on guard, but by attacking and getting well hammered yourself. Now, the fact that I used to be 6'5" will give you some idea. But the good news is that more and more people are looking for you, and finding you, and joining you. For cooperatives are, I think, a light of hope in a very bleak time when America is descending into plutocracy. That's why I belong to co-ops. I don't. Walmart represents no single value that I have within me. So why am I going to spend my money there? So I'm a longtime member at Wheatsville, a longtime member of Co-op Radio here. They carry my little radio commentaries that I have across the country. I'll be going down to the downtown farmers market when I leave you here, and I'll get a Red Rabbit donut down there. big time supporter and, of the Black Star Co-op, one of the original little tiny investors in it. And they put a bunch of us tiny people together to be able to make quite a marvelous product. And I believe in lubricating the movement, so I'm going to share of that. I write about co-ops. My Hightower Lowdown newsletter, I think you got copies of it available to you here. This is just a year ago. I did a whole one of issues on the topic of co-ops. Yes, we can manage this country without the corporate priesthood. The cooperative movement shows us how. And had a terrific response to that because, as Mike was indicating, a lot of people don't think of co-ops. They're not aware of them. So we got about 130,000 subscribers to this thing, and people were quite surprised and quite impressed about this democratic possibility. In Susan Marco, in my latest book, The Swim Against the Current, even a dead fish can go with the flow. We write in there about the cooperatives. And then as I travel the country, I go with the co-ops as well. I'm a couple of times a year up in Madison, Wisconsin, and a regular with the Union Cab Company there, which is a terrific organization that's, I think they started about 1975, becoming a co-op, first a union-organized co-op, and they've been quite a fight. Yesterday morning I was at the Blooming Foods food co-op in Bloomington, Indiana. I gave a talk there Thursday night and then went over to the co-op yesterday morning. Well, I come to you not merely from Austin, but also from South Austin. And on that side of the river, we have a little different attitude. We're a little irreverent. Our unofficial slogan over there is, we're all here because we're not all there. And I think that is what brings us together here today, because the powers that be are nowhere near there in terms of honoring those proud progressive values of our country, of fairness and justice and opportunity for all. In fact, they're as confused as goats on astroturf when it comes to understanding what America really is about. And we've seen this as they stomp with increasing fury on the common good to erect an economy of uncommon greed. I mean, if you think about it, in just the last 30 years, we've gone from Ronald Reagan's trickle-down economics to the Koch brothers' tickle-down economics. And we see it in the Wall Street banksters who crashed our economy, immediately got taken care of by Washington, and they are back getting bonuses, while the crashees, the victims of their narcissistic greed, are still getting eviction notices and pink slips. Yet the banksters have rationalized this, and have actually come back, written articles about it, and of course lobbied Congress on this basis that, well, wealth is important in America, that without accumulation of wealth there would be no philanthropists. And that we, yes, we make a lot of money, but then we are also charitable people. Well, it's not Sunday yet, but I'll tell you what the gods think about charity. A little story that Earl Long used to tell when he was a governor over here in Louisiana. Told about a rich man who died and tried to get into heaven. If you'd gone to that little Methodist church that I did up in Denison, Texas growing up, you'd know that you just don't enter into heaven. You've got to appear at the pearly gates. There's an angel outside going to look over your life. And then St. Peter, back behind the gate, is going to decide whether you get to come in or not. So here comes this rich man. And the angel looks over his life and said, my God, you never did no good for nobody, no way. What are you doing here? And the rich man said, well, now, wait a minute, that's not entirely true. That was that time in 1924 when that blind beggar man was on the street and I put a nickel in his cup. The angel said, so? He said, well, 1934, there was a widow woman. She needed car fare home, and I gave her a nickel. And the angel said, that doesn't make up for a life of greed. He said, no, but I have a consistent pattern of philanthropy. 1944, coming down to my bank, Salvation Army kettle there. At Christmas time, I put a nickel in there. And the angel turns back to St. Peter and says, what in the world are we going to do with this man? And St. Peter said, give him back his 15 cents and tell him to go to hell. Because it's not charity we want. It's social justice, equal opportunity for all people. That's what we want. I have found in my own life, my travels, and my reading of social movements, history, that the 6 most radical words in any language are, there's got to be a better way. Actually, that's 8 words, but never mind. This is what DeMarco and I were writing about in this book. We've got some 50 stories in here of people who uttered those 6 words, including the founders of Peace Coffee up in Minneapolis, Union Cab Company I mentioned, and Madison's talked about in here, Organic Valley, a great organization of family farms all across the country, including here in Texas. The Lusty Lady Theater in San Francisco. Yes, we have a cooperative strip joint as a part of our movement. All of these people are seeking freedom. Freedom not from big government, but freedom from the corporate order, from the ruthless, soulless pursuit of the bottom line. And of course, we're told that that's all that matters in business. And they always cite old Cal Coolidge, the chief business of American people is business. But what they don't do is go on down 3 lines in that speech of Calvin Coolidge. Because the essential question, of course, is what kind of business? And Coolidge answered that. He said, of course, the accumulation of wealth cannot be justified as the chief end of existence. It's only natural that people seek some level of wealth, but there are many other things we want very much more. The chief ideal of the American people is idealism. Calvin Coolidge. One of the great believers in and pushers for the co-op movement in America was a robber baron, Leland Sanford, the man who founded Stanford University. He was the guy who drove the golden spike in the railroad, cross-country railroad. He exploited Chinese labor. He did some horrible things in his life, but toward the end, he knew that a co-op could do everything that a corporation could, yet would also decentralize wealth, and he'd come to believe in that. And he created Stanford to be a university for the cooperative movement, to teach the methods of and to train people in it, and etc. He died about a couple of years after he established it. They immediately abandoned his idealism. There's not a single co-op course taught at Stanford University today. But it's important that we do that. And in great institutions like this, we ought to be teaching co-ops. And I think that's a goal that the co-op organization should pursue. Getting in front of the National Association of Colleges and Universities and saying, why aren't we teaching this? And that way you have future generations that already know something about co-ops. So I think this is a great potential for us. You are the freedom. You are the better way that I'm talking about here. And of course, some say, well, that can't be done. Corporations are to establish the corporate order is the order of the day, and they've got all the money, they've got the politicians, they got the media. Can't be done. Well, those, I just quote a friend of mine, John Pirangoul. Many of y'all probably know John out here. One of the great creators and innovators and founders of the organic movement in our area. John said, those who say it can't be done do not interrupt those who are doing it. And that would be you. So my message to you this morning, I'm sure you're wondering what it is by now, is not merely to keep on keeping on, but in particular, to extend your efforts on number 6 of those 7 cooperative principles, and that is cooperation among cooperatives. Push that harder than ever before, and that I see that has been coming together here in Austin in very impressive ways. I know when Black Star got started, Wheatsville was there helping not only financially, but also helping in the training and understanding what was involved in the co-op movement, helping to make that happen. And this is the big one to me, is bringing us together. I know that each of us in the progressive cause of not only among co-ops, but just generally, everybody thinks that their thing is the brightest blame on the planet, and therefore everybody should be joining them. But we need to lift our heads and look around just a little bit with just a itty bitty bit more coordination, with just the slightest more cooperation. The whole of our effort can be so much more than the sum of our parts. And this is not something I'm just here today preaching to you. I've been talking to the progressive media around the country about that. Katrina Vanden Heuvel at Nation, and myself, and Jay Harris used to be at Mother Jones, and we've been talking about how do we do this together so that community radio is linked up to the local alternative weekly, which is tied into the public interest movement, which is tied in to the libraries and the independent bookstores, who are tied in then to the Amy Goodmans and Tom Hartmans on the radio, myself and others, and we become bigger as a whole if we all focused on a simple topic every now and then, in our own way, do it our own way, but you know, we would then have that echo chamber that the right wing has so effectively. Rather than little drips, we could become an actual splash every now and then. So, enough from me. I know that you're going to work it out cooperatively, and you've got wonderful sessions that I see here today, and I would echo one more that Mike was saying there, and that is the politics of it. A lot of people, particularly in grassroots movements, sometimes they think, well, politics is so dirty, you know, it's corrupt, and we can't get to the office holders, and you know, it's just, well, you've just got to be. I think of Butch Hancock. He's one of our great Austin singer-songwriters, and member of the Flatlanders, Jimmy Dale Gilmore and Joey Lee and them. And Butch was on a radio talk show that DeMarco and I had some years ago, and he was explaining to us how confusing it was as a teenage boy growing up in Lubbock, out in that evangelical, just fundamentalist, Church of Christ sort of country out there. And he said that they would tell us that sex was just the filthiest, most disgusting thing on earth, and you should save it for someone you love. Find a way to love politics, because if you're not in politics, someone else is. And that's been the problem. And you start locally with that and expand wherever. But we have to be involved in politics, because, like it or not, politics does shape. Politics is the art of policy making in our public, and that means we have got to be aggressively involved in it, and become a presence to your lawmakers, whether that's local or state or national. Become a presence, make them know your name, go to their meetings, make appointments to go to their offices, and if they won't respond, if they reject you, then surround their offices with people, with co-op members, and say, we're here, here's something that we want to have happen, that we are the people, and that you are an economic presence as well as a voter presence in their community. You have more power politically than you realize, but you have to assert it. If nobody knows that you're there, then your power is just ill spent. But if you're in their face, then they will know it, and you'll make it happen. Well, I'll leave you with this thought. It's from about us getting together and working together. Again, it's a slogan of a local business, Harold's Hardware, over here on the south side. It's a great little hardware store. If you haven't been to it, it's over on Old Torp near Lamar. And it's a great little store. It's no bigger than this room, really. Not one of those big box things. And at Harold's, you don't have to buy the whole box of nails. They'll sell you 2 nails, you know, if that's what you need. And they'll say, well, what are you trying to do? Well, I'm going to build a lectern. Well, let's pencil it out here and see what you need. They'll loan you a tool at Harold's. You can take a tool home and bring it back. And the slogan at Harold's is, together, we can do it yourself. That seems appropriate to the cooperative movement to me. One more final thing, and this is from Louis Grisard, the late great Southern humorist. He once explained something that we in the South have always known to be true, and that is that there's a great big difference between being naked and being naked. Being naked means you have no clothes on. Being naked, that means you have no clothes on and you are up to something. So, let's get naked. Thank you.
News.